Ladies and gentlemen, I want to start by asking you a simple question. What if you could wake up tomorrow and be just a little bit better than you were today? Not perfect, not a whole new person, just 1% better. Too often, we get caught up in the idea that change has to be monumental to matter. We think I have to overhaul my entire life to be worthy, successful, or happy, but here's the truth. True growth is quiet, steady, and it happens in the smallest of steps. Improving yourself by 1% each morning isn't just about habits or productivity. It's about courage to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm not there yet, but I'm willing to try. And that starts with vulnerability, the willingness to admit where you're stuck, where you feel small, or where you've fallen short. Because without that honesty, there's no starting point for improvement. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking, 1%, that's nothing. What can 1% possibly do? Let me tell you, 1% compounded over time is everything. Imagine if every day you made the smallest effort, just enough to shift forward. That effort accumulates, it grows, it builds momentum. And before you know it, those tiny acts of courage become a tidal wave of transformation. But let me also be clear, this isn't about being perfect. Perfection is the enemy of progress. Perfection tells you if you can't do it all, don't bother, but we know better. We know that showing up, even on the hard days, even with messy effort, is what truly matters. And while you're on this journey, don't forget to be kind to yourself. Self-improvement isn't about beating yourself up for not being enough, it's about cheering yourself on for trying. Because if you approach this process with compassion, you'll find that even your missteps teach you something valuable. Lastly, remember to celebrate the process, not just the result. Every morning you decide to be 1% better is a victory. Every time you choose courage over comfort, that's a win. Because it's not the size of the step that matters, it's the direction you're headed. So tomorrow morning when you wake up, ask yourself, what's my 1% today? Maybe it's taking a breath before reacting. Maybe it's choosing gratitude over frustration. Maybe it's trying again when it would be easier to give up. Whatever it is, do it. And then do it again. Day by day, step by step, you're building something extraordinary. And that 1%, it's going to change everything. When we think about creating meaningful change in our lives, our minds often gravitate toward monumental shifts. We imagine making grand gestures or taking massive leaps forward. It feels satisfying to picture ourselves transforming overnight into someone stronger, smarter, more accomplished, or more at peace. But reality doesn't work that way. True change is not born from sweeping overhauls or drastic measures. It's built slowly, deliberately, and consistently, one small step at a time. There's a principle in mathematics called the compounding effect, which states that small incremental growth accumulates over time to create exponential results. The same principle applies to our personal growth and development. Improving by just 1% might seem trivial, even insignificant in the moment. But 1% compounded daily creates a ripple effect that can lead to profound transformation. Let's consider an example from everyday life. Imagine you decide to spend 5 extra minutes each morning journaling about gratitude. That's it, just 5 minutes. On any given day, it doesn't seem like you've accomplished much. But over a year, those 5 minutes add up to over 30 hours of intentional gratitude practice. That's 30 hours of rewiring your brain to notice the good, cultivating positivity, and grounding yourself in the present moment. This single, seemingly small habit can begin to shift how you see the world and how you show up in your relationships, work, and challenges. The beauty of small steps lies in their accessibility. Large goals often feel intimidating or even paralyzing. You might look at a major aspiration like running a marathon, writing a book, or starting a business and feel so overwhelmed that you don't even know where to begin. But what if the only thing you had to do today was lace up your running shoes, write a single paragraph, or brainstorm one idea? That's manageable. It's doable. And once you've taken that first step, it becomes easier to take the next one. Momentum builds, and with it, confidence grows. Over time, those small actions start to snowball into something remarkable. Another important aspect of small steps is their sustainability. When we take on too much too quickly, we often burn out. How many times have you set an ambitious New Year's resolution only to abandon it weeks or even days later? It's not because you lack willpower or determination. It's because massive change requires massive energy, and that's not something most of us can sustain long term. Small steps, on the other hand, are less taxing. They fit into the rhythm of our daily lives, allowing us to build consistency without overwhelming ourselves. Consistency is the magic ingredient. It's the difference between fleeting motivation and lasting results. Small, daily actions might not feel dramatic, but they create a sense of commitment and discipline. Every time you take a small step, you reinforce a belief in your own ability to show up and follow through. Over time, this builds trust in yourself, a crucial foundation for growth. You begin to see yourself as someone who keeps promises, even the ones you make to yourself. That trust becomes the bedrock for tackling bigger challenges down the road. It's also worth noting that small steps allow us to learn and adapt as we go. When you take a tiny incremental step, you have the opportunity to evaluate its impact and course correct if necessary. This flexibility is invaluable. Big, sweeping changes often come with significant risk, and when they don't work out as planned, it can feel like a devastating setback. But with small steps, there's less at stake. If one approach doesn't work, you can adjust and try something else without feeling like you've lost everything. This iterative process of learning and growing is how true progress happens. Small steps are also uniquely powerful because they challenge us to focus on the present moment. Often we become so fixated on the end goal that we lose sight of the process. We think I'll be happy when, or I'll feel successful once I've achieved. But when we commit to small, daily improvements, we're reminded that growth is not just about the destination, it's about the journey. Each small action becomes an opportunity to be present, to engage fully with what's in front of us, and to celebrate the effort we're making right now. This process is especially important when we're navigating challenges or working through difficult seasons in life. Big problems can feel insurmountable when we try to tackle them all at once. But breaking them down into manageable pieces gives us a way forward. It reminds us that we don't have to have all the answers right now. We just need to take the next small step. For instance, consider someone recovering from a significant loss. The idea of healing might feel abstract and impossible, but maybe the next small step is simply getting out of bed or reaching out to a friend or taking a walk around the block. Each of these actions, while small, is an act of resilience. They add up. Over time, they help create a new normal, even in the face of profound difficulty. Finally, small steps create a sense of agency. They remind us that no matter how big or daunting a challenge may seem, we always have the power to do something about it. Even in situations where we feel stuck or powerless, there is almost always a next step we can take, however small it might be. That action, however modest, shifts us from a passive state to an active one. It reminds us that we are not defined by our circumstances, we are defined by how we respond to them. And by focusing on small steps, we give ourselves permission to start where we are with what we have. We move away from the pressure to be perfect and toward the freedom to simply try. And as we try, we grow not in giant, dramatic leaps, but in steady, meaningful increments that lead to real, lasting change. Vulnerability is often misunderstood. In a world that prizes strength, self-reliance, and invulnerability, being open about our emotions, fears, or uncertainties can feel like a dangerous act. It's easy to equate vulnerability with weakness, imagining that showing others the cracks in our armor will expose us to judgment, rejection, or shame. But what if the very thing we fear being seen in our most authentic, unguarded state is also the source of our greatest power? Vulnerability at its core is about being real. It's the willingness to show up fully present without the guarantee of a perfect outcome. It's about saying, this is who I am, imperfections and all, and being brave enough to let others see that truth. While that might sound terrifying, it's also liberating. Vulnerability is not about giving up control. It's about stepping into a space of courage where true connection, growth, and transformation become possible. One of the first and most important aspects of vulnerability is self-awareness. To embrace vulnerability, we have to first be honest with ourselves about how we're feeling and what we're experiencing. That might mean acknowledging fears we'd rather ignore, admitting that we need help, or confronting emotions like sadness, disappointment, or anger. This self-honesty can be difficult, especially if we've been taught to push aside our feelings in favor of appearing strong. But without it, we remain disconnected from our own humanity. When we deny our vulnerability, we also cut ourselves off from joy. Vulnerability is not just about exposing the hard parts of our lives, it's also about allowing ourselves to feel deeply, to love fully, and to take risks that bring meaning and richness to our existence. Imagine the courage it takes to fall in love, to start a new career, or to chase a dream. Each of these acts requires vulnerability because there's always the possibility of failure, rejection, or loss. Yet without that risk, we miss out on the fullness of life. Consider relationships the cornerstone of human connection. True intimacy, whether it's with a partner, friend, or family member, cannot exist without vulnerability. When we hide behind masks or walls, we may protect ourselves from pain, but we also prevent others from truly knowing us. Vulnerability is the bridge that allows us to say, this is my story and I trust you with it. It's in those moments of honesty and openness that bonds deepen and love flourishes. Without vulnerability, relationships remain surface level, a collection of safe but hollow interactions. But embracing vulnerability doesn't just affect our personal lives, it's also essential in the workplace and in leadership. Leaders who can admit mistakes, share their uncertainties, and ask for input create a culture of trust and innovation. Vulnerability in leadership is not about appearing unprepared or weak, it's about modeling authenticity and encouraging collaboration. When a leader says, I don't have all the answers, but I value your perspective, they invite others into the process, empowering their teams to contribute and grow. Of course, embracing vulnerability is not without its challenges. One of the biggest obstacles is fear of judgment, fear of rejection, and fear of failure. These fears are valid. Being vulnerable does open us up to the possibility of hurt. But it's important to recognize that avoiding vulnerability doesn't protect us as much as we think it does. When we shield ourselves from vulnerability, we also shield ourselves from connection, creativity, and the opportunity to live fully. A key part of overcoming this fear is learning to differentiate between vulnerability and oversharing. Vulnerability is intentional and thoughtful. It's about being open in ways that foster connection and understanding. Oversharing, on the other hand, often stems from a lack of boundaries or an attempt to seek validation. Embracing vulnerability doesn't mean sharing every detail of your life with everyone you meet. It means being selective and discerning about when, where, and with whom you choose to open up. Another challenge of vulnerability is the presence of shame. Shame tells us that we are not enough, that our flaws or mistakes make us unworthy of love and belonging. It's a powerful force that can keep us stuck in silence, afraid to let others see the parts of us we're most insecure about. But the antidote to shame is vulnerability. When we name our shame and share it with someone who is compassionate and trustworthy, its power diminishes. It's in these moments of vulnerability that we realize we're not alone in our struggles and that our imperfections do not define us. One of the most transformative aspects of vulnerability is its ability to foster empathy. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we create space for others to do the same. It's a reminder that we all have moments of doubt, fear, and struggle, and that these experiences are part of what it means to be human. Vulnerability breaks down the illusion of perfection and invites others to meet us in a space of shared humanity. Vulnerability is also deeply tied to resilience. It takes strength to face uncertainty, to risk failure, and to acknowledge our limitations. But each time we choose vulnerability, we build our capacity to navigate challenges with courage and grace. We learn that vulnerability is not something to be avoided, but embraced as a source of growth. It's through vulnerability that we discover our ability to rise after setbacks, to learn from our mistakes, and to find meaning in our experiences. Finally, vulnerability is an act of self-compassion. It's about giving ourselves permission to be imperfect and recognizing that we are worthy of love and belonging exactly as we are. When we let go of the need to appear flawless, we free ourselves from the burden of perfectionism and create space for authenticity. This self-acceptance not only enriches our own lives, but also sets an example for others to do the same. In the end, vulnerability is not a weakness, but a profound source of strength. It is the courage to show up, to be seen, and to embrace the beautiful, messy, and unpredictable journey of life. The pursuit of perfection is often celebrated in our society. We're taught from an early age that being the best, achieving flawless results, or making no mistakes is the ultimate goal. Perfection, however, is a moving target, one that can paralyze us with fear, keep us from starting, or leave us feeling defeated when we inevitably fall short. What's often overlooked in this relentless chase for perfection is the power of consistency. Showing up regularly, doing the work and making steady progress, even when it's messy or imperfect, is far more effective and fulfilling than waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect effort, or the perfect outcome. Consistency, by definition, is about reliability and regularity. It's the act of committing to something and sticking with it over time. While perfection demands an unattainable standard, consistency offers a realistic and sustainable path to growth and success. Consider the process of building strength. If someone aims to lift the heaviest weights on their first try or skips workouts because they can't complete them perfectly, they won't make progress. On the other hand, someone who consistently lifts lighter weights, gradually increasing their efforts over time, will build strength steadily and reliably. The same principle applies to all areas of life, whether it's learning a new skill, pursuing a goal, or building relationships. One of the greatest advantages of consistency is its ability to create habits. When you show up consistently, even for small actions, those actions start to feel natural and automatic. Over time, they become a part of your identity. For example, if you decide to write for 10 minutes every morning, you might not produce a masterpiece on any given day, but you're reinforcing the habit of writing. Eventually, writing becomes part of who you are, not because you've written something perfect, but because you've made it a consistent practice. This shift from occasional effort to habitual behavior is where real transformation begins. Consistency also builds momentum. Starting something new can feel overwhelming, especially when perfection looms over us like an intimidating shadow. But small, consistent efforts create a sense of progress, which fuels motivation. It's much easier to keep going when you see even a tiny bit of improvement. Each step, no matter how small, reinforces your commitment and gives you the confidence to take the next one. Over time, these incremental gains add up, creating a snowball effect that leads to significant achievements. On the flip side, perfectionism often has the opposite effect. It stalls progress before it even begins. When we set impossibly high standards for ourselves, we're less likely to start a project or task out of fear that we won't do it perfectly. Perfectionism whispers, if you can't do it right, don't do it at all. This mindset is a trap that leads to procrastination and missed opportunities. Consistency, however, invites us to start where we are with what we have. It allows us to move forward, even if our efforts aren't flawless. Consistency also teaches us to value the process over the result. Perfectionism places all its emphasis on outcomes, winning, succeeding, or achieving a specific goal. But the reality is that growth happens in the process, not just in the final product. And when you focus on showing up consistently, you learn to appreciate the journey. You begin to find meaning and satisfaction in the act of doing, rather than pinning all your hopes on an end result. This shift in perspective can make the work itself more enjoyable and rewarding. Another important aspect of consistency is its role in building resilience. Life is unpredictable and challenges are inevitable. When perfection is the goal, a single setback can feel catastrophic. Perfectionism doesn't allow for mistakes or missteps, so when things go wrong, it can be tempting to give up altogether. Consistency, on the other hand, embraces imperfection. It recognizes that progress isn't linear and that setbacks are a natural part of the journey. By committing to consistent effort, you develop the resilience to keep going, even when things don't go as planned. This resilience strengthens over time, making you better equipped to handle future challenges. Consistency also fosters self-trust. Every time you show up, even when it's hard or inconvenient, you're proving to yourself that you can be relied upon. This builds a sense of confidence and self-efficacy. You begin to trust your ability to follow through, which has a ripple effect on other areas of your life. Perfectionism, by contrast, often erodes self-trust. When you hold yourself to an impossible standard, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Each perceived failure chips away at your confidence, reinforcing the false belief that you're not good enough. It's important to note that consistency doesn't mean perfection in itself. Consistency doesn't require you to show up the same way every day or to never falter. It simply asks that you return to the effort again and again, even after a misstep. Imagine someone learning to play an instrument. They might miss a day of practice or hit a wrong note during a performance, but as long as they keep practicing regularly, they'll improve over time. Consistency allows for grace and flexibility. It's not about being perfect, but about being persistent. Finally, consistency creates a foundation for meaningful, lasting change. While perfectionism seeks immediate results, consistency recognizes that real progress takes time. Think of a garden. If you water it once a month with gallons of water, the plants will wither and die. But if you water it a little every day, the garden thrives. The same is true for personal growth and achievement. Small, consistent efforts nurture your goals and dreams, allowing them to flourish in ways that perfectionism never could. In a world that often glorifies instant success and flawless execution, choosing consistency over perfection can feel counterintuitive. Yet it's this steady, imperfect effort that leads to genuine growth and fulfillment. By embracing consistency, you create space for progress, resilience, and self-compassion. It's not about doing everything perfectly, it's about showing up, doing the work, and trusting that small, consistent actions will pave the way to extraordinary results. Compassion is a gift we often extend to others but struggle to give ourselves. When a friend is hurting, we offer them understanding, encouragement, and forgiveness. Yet when we face our own challenges or make mistakes, we are often our harshest critics, berating ourselves for not being good enough or strong enough. This tendency to judge ourselves harshly is common, but it's also harmful. Self-compassion, the practice of treating yourself with the same kindness and care you would show to someone you love, is not just a nicety, it's a necessity for mental, emotional, and even physical well-being. At its core, self-compassion is about recognizing your humanity. We all have moments when we fall short, struggle, or experience pain. These moments don't make us failures, they make us human. When we acknowledge this shared experience, it becomes easier to let go of unrealistic expectations of perfection. Self-compassion invites us to stop punishing ourselves for being imperfect and instead approach our struggles with gentleness and understanding. One of the most important aspects of self-compassion is self-kindness. This means speaking to yourself in a supportive and encouraging way, especially during difficult times. Imagine you've made a mistake at work. Your inner critic might immediately lash out, saying, "How could you be so careless? You're going to ruin everything now." Think about how you would respond if a friend made the same mistake. You'd probably say something like, "Everyone makes mistakes. It's okay, you'll figure this out." Self-kindness means offering yourself the same grace and encouragement you would extend to someone else. It's not about ignoring mistakes, it's about responding to them in a way that fosters growth rather than shame. Self-compassion also involves mindfulness, being present with your emotions without judgment. Often when we're struggling, we either suppress our feelings or become consumed by them. Neither approach is helpful. Suppression creates emotional tension that can eventually lead to burnout, while over-identifying with negative emotions can make them feel overwhelming and inescapable. Mindfulness provides a middle path. It allows us to acknowledge our pain without letting it define us. By simply noticing our emotions and accepting them as part of our experience, we create space for healing and perspective. Another key element of self-compassion is recognizing that you're not alone in your struggles. When things go wrong, it's easy to feel isolated, as though you're the only one who has ever failed, made a poor decision, or felt inadequate. This sense of isolation can deepen feelings of shame and self-criticism. But the truth is, everyone struggles. Everyone has moments of doubt, fear, and failure. When you remind yourself that your challenges are part of the shared human experience, it becomes easier to approach yourself with compassion rather than judgment. Self-compassion is particularly important in the face of failure. Society often teaches us to equate our worth with our accomplishments, which can make failure feel devastating. But failure is not a reflection of your value as a person, it's an inevitable part of learning and growth. When you approach failure with self-compassion, you give yourself permission to learn from it rather than being crushed by it. You might say to yourself, "This didn't go as planned, but it's an opportunity to grow and do better next time." This mindset not only softens the sting of failure, but also empowers you to keep moving forward. Being compassionate toward yourself also helps combat perfectionism. Perfectionism sets an impossible standard, demanding that you get everything right all the time. When you inevitably fall short, it triggers harsh self-criticism and feelings of inadequacy. Self-compassion offers an antidote. It reminds you that it's okay to make mistakes and that your worth is not tied to how perfectly you perform. This doesn't mean settling for mediocrity, it means pursuing excellence in a way that is sustainable and kind to yourself. Self-compassion also plays a crucial role in emotional resilience. Life is full of ups and downs, and how you respond to the downs can significantly impact your well-being. When you're compassionate with yourself during tough times, you build the resilience to navigate challenges without being overwhelmed by them. Instead of spiraling into self-blame or despair, you can say, "This is hard, but I'm doing the best I can. I'll get through it." This approach doesn't eliminate pain, but it does make it more manageable. Importantly, self-compassion is not the same as self-pity or self-indulgence. Self-pity focuses on feeling sorry for yourself and can lead to a sense of helplessness, while self-compassion is about empowering yourself to heal and grow. Similarly, self-compassion doesn't mean avoiding responsibility or ignoring areas where you need to improve. It means approaching those areas with kindness and a willingness to grow, rather than harsh judgment. Self-compassion also strengthens relationships. When you're kinder to yourself, you're less likely to seek validation from others or to project your insecurities onto them. You're also more likely to extend compassion to others, creating deeper and more meaningful connections. In this way, self-compassion is not just a gift to yourself, but to everyone around you. One of the biggest barriers to self-compassion is the belief that it's selfish. Many people feel that being kind to themselves is indulgent or takes away from their ability to care for others. But the opposite is true. Self-compassion replenishes your emotional reserves, giving you the energy and strength to show up for others in a meaningful way. Think of it like putting on your own oxygen mask first. You can't help anyone else if you're running on empty. Developing self-compassion takes practice, especially if you're used to being self-critical. Start small. Pay attention to how you speak to yourself, especially when things go wrong, and make a conscious effort to replace harsh criticism with kind and supportive words. Practice mindfulness by sitting with your emotions instead of avoiding or overanalyzing them. And remind yourself often that your struggles are part of the shared human experience. You are not alone, and you are not broken. The journey towards self-compassion isn't always easy, but it's one of the most rewarding paths you can take. It's an act of courage to treat yourself with kindness in a world that often demands perfection. By embracing self-compassion, you open the door to greater self-acceptance, resilience, and joy. In a culture that places immense value on results, winning, achieving goals, and crossing finish lines, it's easy to overlook the journey. We're conditioned to believe that success is measured solely by outcomes: the promotion we earn, the weight we lose, the degree we obtain, or the milestone we reach. While these achievements are significant, focusing exclusively on the destination can blind us to the beauty, growth, and meaning that occur along the way. By shifting our perspective to celebrate the journey, we unlock a deeper sense of fulfillment, resilience, and purpose. The journey represents the process, the effort, and the lessons learned along the way. It's the time spent trying, failing, adjusting, and persisting. Unlike outcomes, which are often fleeting moments, the journey is where life happens. It's the day-to-day dedication, the small victories, and even the challenges that shape who we are. Celebrating the journey means recognizing the value in the process rather than attaching our worth or happiness solely to the end result. One of the greatest benefits of celebrating the journey is that it cultivates gratitude. When we focus solely on outcomes, we risk falling into the trap of destination addiction and mindset that convinces us we'll be happy once we achieve a specific goal. This approach delays our sense of satisfaction, leaving us perpetually chasing the next milestone. But when we learn to appreciate the steps we take along the way, we discover joy in the present moment. Gratitude for the journey reminds us that the process itself is a gift, a chance to grow, learn, and experience life fully. The journey is also where resilience is built. Success is rarely a straight path. It's often filled with detours, setbacks, and unexpected challenges. These moments can feel frustrating or even disheartening if we're solely focused on the outcome. However, when we celebrate the journey, we begin to see these obstacles as opportunities to grow stronger and more adaptable. Every failure teaches us something valuable, every hurdle tests our determination, and every delay builds our patience. By embracing these moments as integral parts of the journey, we develop the resilience to keep moving forward. Additionally, celebrating the journey allows us to savor progress. Big goals often take time to achieve, and when we fixate on the final outcome, we can miss the incremental progress we're making along the way. Each small step, whether it's completing a task, overcoming a fear, or improving a skill, deserves recognition. Celebrating these moments not only keeps us motivated, but also reminds us of how far we've come. Progress isn't always linear or obvious, but when we take the time to acknowledge it, we gain a sense of accomplishment that fuels our momentum. Another powerful reason to celebrate the journey is that it shifts our focus from external validation to internal fulfillment. Outcomes are often tied to external markers of success awards, recognition, or societal approval. While these can be rewarding, they're also fleeting and largely out of our control. The journey, however, is deeply personal. It's where we discover our passions, build meaningful relationships, and develop a stronger sense of self. By celebrating the effort we put into the process, we find fulfillment that isn't dependent on others' opinions or external circumstances. The journey also teaches us to embrace imperfection. In our quest for success, we often set impossibly high standards for ourselves, believing that anything less than perfection is a failure. This mindset not only sets us up for disappointment, but also makes it difficult to appreciate the process. When we celebrate the journey, we acknowledge that imperfection is a natural and necessary part of growth. Mistakes and missteps are not failures, they're stepping stones that lead us closer to our goals. By shifting our perspective, we give ourselves permission to learn, experiment, and evolve without the pressure of being perfect. Celebrating the journey can also deepen our relationships. Many of life's most meaningful moments happen not in the grand achievements, but in the shared experiences along the way. Think about a team working toward a common goal or friends supporting each other through challenges. The bonds formed during these times are often more significant than the outcome itself. By valuing the journey, we create space to connect with others, to celebrate their contributions, and to build lasting memories. Perhaps one of the most overlooked aspects of celebrating the journey is the sense of purpose it brings. When we're solely focused on the outcome, it's easy to lose sight of why we started in the first place. The journey, however, keeps us grounded in our why. It reminds us of the values, passions, and aspirations that drive us. By celebrating the journey, we stay connected to our purpose, which gives our efforts greater meaning, keeps us motivated, even when the path is difficult. It's important to recognize that celebrating the journey doesn't mean ignoring the outcome. Achieving goals and reaching milestones are important and deserve to be acknowledged. But when we place all our emphasis on the destination, we risk missing out on the richness of the experience itself. The journey is where transformation happens. It's where we become the person capable of achieving the goal. By celebrating the process, we honor the effort, dedication, and courage it takes to keep moving forward. Learning to celebrate the journey also requires a shift in mindset. Instead of viewing the process as a means to an end, we can choose to see it as an end in itself. This means finding joy in the work, appreciating the lessons learned, and embracing the challenges as opportunities for growth. It also means letting go of the belief that our worth is tied to our achievements. We are worthy not because of what we accomplish, but because of who we are and the effort we put into our pursuits. Finally, celebrating the journey reminds us that life itself is a journey. While goals and achievements are important, they're just moments within a much larger story. If we spend all our time chasing the next milestone, we risk missing out on the beauty, connection, and growth that make life meaningful. The journey is where we live, and by learning to celebrate it, we open ourselves to a richer and more fulfilling experience. In the end, every step we take toward growth and fulfillment is worth celebrating. Life isn't just about the goals we achieve or the milestones we reach, it's about who we become along the way. By focusing on progress over perfection, embracing vulnerability, practicing self-compassion, and finding joy in the journey, we unlock a deeper sense of purpose and meaning. Success is not measured by the destination alone, but by the resilience, courage, and wisdom we cultivate as we move forward. So let's honor the process, cherish the moments of growth, and trust that even the smallest steps can lead to extraordinary change.